Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created with Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on our battle scene polish by adding in the support for custom fonts by using the web font loader library, and we were able to add in our custom fonts and apply them to our battle scene. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up. So let's get started. Alright, so now we've wrapped up our logic for adding in our custom fonts. The next step for our battle scene polish is we're going to start adding in our attack animations. And so what we're going to do is we're going to load in some assets, so some sprite sheets for us to create some attacks for our monsters. And then we're going to go ahead and create those animations in Phaser, and then we're going to hook them into our monster game objects. So then that way we can play those animations from our monster class. And then that way it'll really bring our battle scene to life. And so to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to load in a few assets from artist Tamer. And so we're going to be using this ice shard effect here for creating our ice attack. And then there's another collection. He has this battle VFX slashes and thrust. And we're going to be using this slash to go ahead and create our own custom slash attack. And so this can be similar to like the claw attacks in Pokemon. We'll be using 3 of them to go ahead and create this claw attack. And so there'll be links to these assets in the description of this video. There's also links in the README and in the game assets on our release here. So if you can go ahead and download the attack assets 1-zip folder, there'll be a link to the direct download in the description of this video. And then what we'll do is we're going to add those assets to our game. So if we come back to our code, what we'll do is we'll go into our assets folder under images. What we'll do is we're going to add a new folder, and we're going to call it Tamer for our artist. So we'll do Pimen. And so inside here, what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and place our /png, and then we're going to go ahead and make another subfolder, and we're going to call this ice attack. So there's going to be 2 assets for our ice attack. And so one of them is an active PNG, and this other one is a start PNG. And so for our ice attack, we're going to have, when the ice starts, it's going to play this first animation, so it's going to be building up. And then for the ice shard, this is when it's going to do that full blast here. So it's going to be 2 parts to create the full animation effect. Alright, so now that we've added the assets to our game, what we actually need to do is, like our other assets, let's jump into our source folder, let's go into our assets folder, and we need to go ahead and create our object keys. So we're going to go ahead and copy this variable here, let's go ahead and paste it, and what we're going to call this is we're going to call this attack asset keys. And for our values, our keys, we're going to call it ice shard. And we will have ice shard, and we'll do start. And then we're going to go ahead and have our slash attack. And then what we'll do is let's jump over to our preload scene, so we can go ahead and load those in our preloader. So we come into our scenes, let's go into preload scene, and we'll go ahead and add a new comment, and we'll do load attack assets. Alright, so for our assets, these are going to be sprite sheets. So to go ahead and load in sprite sheets, what we'll do is we'll do list.load, and we're going to do sprite sheet. So we need to provide our keys for our unique asset we're loading. So we're going to do our attack asset keys, and we'll go ahead and do our ice shard first. Then we need to go ahead and specify the URL to where our file is located. So what we'll do is we're going to make a new variable, and we're going to do Pimen asset path, and we'll create this in a second. And so this will be under ice attack, and this will be our active.png. And for our sprite sheets, what you can do is you can specify a configuration of how you want this sprite sheet to be broken up into frames. And so with our sprite sheets, typically these would be used for animations, but they could also be used for if you have multiple images on your sprite sheet and you want to have your image game objects use a particular frame. And so by providing your configuration, this is going to tell Phaser how to parse the data and create those frames. So as an example, if we open up our slash, so we'll see we have 5 different frames, and we need to tell Phaser how to cut this sprite sheet into those frames. And so with your config, it allows you to specify things like your margin, your padding between each frame, and the frame width and height of each one. And so you can imagine if we have a larger sprite sheet, this would allow us to provide all those details that we need to load in the asset correctly. All right, and so for this particular sprite sheet, our frame width and our frame height are both 32 pixels. So we're just going to go ahead and specify those. And then Phaser will go ahead and use that for when it goes ahead and creates the individual textures, individual frames from that sprite sheet. And then real quick, what we'll do is let's go ahead and make our new variable. So we'll come up here, we'll do const, we'll do pieman asset path, will be equal to our assets, our images, and then pieman. Then what we'll do is we just need to do our other two assets. So let's copy this line here and we'll paste it twice. And so we're going to have our ice shard start. And so this is going to be our start PNG with our 32 and 32. And then we need to go ahead and do our slash. And so this is going to be at the root, and it will be our slash PNG. And this is actually 48 pixels by 48 pixels. All right, so now we've finished loading in our assets. What we need to do now is actually create our attack game objects and our attack animations. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take an approach similar to how we did our battle monsters. And what we'll do is we're going to create a base attack class. And this is going to be our parent class that'll be for creating any type of our attacks. And so here is where we'd set like our phaser scene. We would add a property for our game objects. We would go ahead and add the methods that we want our child classes to implement, so like playing animations. And then what we do is in each of our child classes, so like our ice shard and our slash, this is where we'll create the actual game objects. And then that way, if some of our attacks are actually sprites and they need to be animated, or maybe some of our attacks are just images and we just need to scale them, we'll keep all that logic abstracted away into the individual attack. And this is where we create our animation. So then that way, if our attack is a sprite, it needs one or more animations, it's all created inside that class. And likewise, if it's just a image, we wouldn't need to do that. So to get started, what we'll do is we'll come to our source code. Let's go into our battle folder and we're going to make a new subfolder. We're going to call this attacks. And so under our attacks subfolder, we'll make a new file and we're going to call this attack.js. All right, and so what we'll want to do is let's go ahead and export out our class. We'll have class, we'll call this attack, and we'll go ahead and add in our constructor. And so the first thing we'll expect is our scene, and we're going to go ahead and expect a position for where our game object should be placed at. And then so we'll want to store both of these properties on our class. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and jump over to our battle monster class real quick. Let's copy this line of code here for our scene. So for our child attacks, we'll also have protected properties and we'll want to reference them. So we'll have this scene will be equal to our scene. Then we'll need to go ahead and create a property for our position. So we're going to copy this here. And so we will have a protected property called position. And what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and reference our coordinate type. So we'll go ahead and import that. And then we will do this. Position will be equal to our position. All right, so on our constructor, let's go ahead and just add in our JS doc comments real quick. And so for our scene, this will be a phaser.scene. And for position, this is going to be our coordinate. And then what we'll do is at the top of our class, we're just going to go ahead and import phaser from ... We'll do our lib and we will do our phaser.js file. And real quick, what we'll do is in our battle monster, we'll also go ahead and add that there. All right, and so for our attack class, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add two more properties. One of them is for knowing if an animation is currently playing. And then that way, if we call our play animation method that we'll be adding, we're only going to play an animation if one's not already currently playing. So what we'll do is we're just going to copy this here. Let's go ahead and add our new property. And so this is going to be a Boolean. We're going to call this is animation playing, and we'll make it protected. And we'll set that on our constructor. We'll set to false. And then we'll need one more property, and this is going to be for our phaser game object. So we're going to go ahead and call this attack game object. And what we'll do is let's go ahead and copy our JS doc type, And so instead of a phaser scene, this is going to be a game object. It could be a sprite if we want it to be animated. Well, we're also going to go ahead and add in game objects. And for the time being, we're going to do a container. And then so what this will be used for is for our slash game object. There's going to be multiple game objects, so we'll want to support a container here. And then what we'll do is we're also going to add in undefined. And so we're going to go ahead and add undefined because we can't actually create our game objects inside our parent class. It's going to have to be inside our child class. And so what we'll do real quick, just to make it explicit, we'll do our attack game object, and we're going to set it to undefined. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a getter for getting our game object. So then that way we can reference this object from our battle scene. So we'll do get game object. And so inside here, we're just going to return this, our attack game object. And this will have the same type as our property. It won't be protected though. And then the last thing we're going to do for our attack class is we're going to go ahead and define a method for playing our animations. And so we'll make a new public method, and we'll do play animation, and we'll do callback. And so inside here, what we're going to do is we'll throw a new error, and we'll say play animation is not implemented. And what we'll want to do is we'll just add in our types real quick. And so for our callback, this will just be a function that returns nothing. And we will go ahead and just add in our returns. And we expect our play animation to return nothing as well. And so what we're doing here is we're just doing our similar logic to what we did our battle monster, where we added in our public methods that we expect our child classes to go ahead and implement. And if they're not, we'll go ahead and throw this error, and then that way it's very evident that we need to implement it inside our child classes. Alright, so now that we have our base attack class in place, we can go ahead and start adding in our first class, and we'll go ahead and do our ice shard first. So what we'll do is under our battle attacks folder, we're going to make a new file. We'll do iceshard.js. And so inside here, we'll go ahead and export our class. So we'll have our ice shard. And what we're going to do is we're going to extend our attack class. And so since we're extending our class, we're going to go ahead and we're going to need to call our super method. And so we'll need our scene and our position. And so we'll need both of these to be provided to our constructor. And what we'll do is we're just going to copy this logic real quick for our js.config. And what we'll do first is we're going to go ahead and create our game object for our sprite. And so to do that, we're going to do this, our attack game object, and we're going to reference our scene. So we'll do this, our protected scene, and we'll do add, and we're going to do a sprite. And so for our sprite, sprite game objects, this is going to allow us to animate our game objects by playing animations. So a little bit different than our image game objects that we've been using so far. And so for our sprite, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and specify our X and Y positions. So for those, we are going to reference our position that was provided as part of our constructor. Then we need to go ahead and specify our texture, so our asset key that we used. And so this is going to be our attack asset keys, and we want to use our ice shard asset. And then we need to go ahead and specify our frame. So with sprite sheets, we can specify a frame of which which frame of the texture we want to use. If we don't provide it, it'll use the first one, so 0. And so we're going to go ahead and specify 5. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to modify a few of our properties. So we're going to go ahead and do set origin, and we'll go ahead and just manually set that to 0.5. Then we're going to go ahead and scale our game objects. We're going to do set scale, and then that way it'll be a little bit bigger and more visible to our player. And we're going to go ahead and set our alpha, and we'll set it to 0. And then so what we're going to do is we are going to override our attack game object. So then that way we know in our ice shard class what the exact type of our attack game object is. And then that way we can reference our properties appropriately. To do that, what we'll do is we'll jump over to our attack.js file. Let's copy our protected property here. We're going to paste it here. And instead of being undefined or a container, we know explicitly that this is going to be a sprite. And so now in our IntelliSense, we can know that our game object is a sprite. And what that should allow us to do is when we reference it, we should now get all of our available properties in our IntelliSense. And then that way we can do things like play, which will allow us to play animations. All right, so now that we have our new ice shard class, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create an instance of it, and then we can make sure our game object is appearing in our game. So if we can jump over to our battle scene, what we'll do is we'll come down to the bottom of our create method, and right after we do our create cursor keys, what we'll do is we'll do const attack, and we're going to set it equal to a new ice shard, and we'll go ahead and specify this for our scene. And for our position, what we'll do is we'll do our X value of 745. We'll do our Y value of 140. And we'll go ahead and save. Oh, and it looks like we have an issue. We jump over to, yes, we need to go ahead and fix our import. So this will be our asset keys JS, and then we need .js on our attack as well. And what we'll do is just going to import phaser as well, and go ahead and save. All right, so if we want to see our game object, let's go ahead and bump our alpha back to 1. Perfect. All right, so we should see right over our enemy game monster, we should see our ice shard attack appearing. And so we can see that the frame we've selected is appearing on our game object. And so what we could do if we want to test out some of our other frames, if we go ahead and change this value, we'll see that those frames are now being chosen when our game object is being rendered, and it's using those for our texture. All right, so now that we've validated that our attack for our ice shard is working, that actually brings this video to an end. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.